I wanted to explore a bit more on the question of masculine and feminine. I understand the feminine as the matrix in which reality comes into being. Is that right? Yes, that's a good way to see it, or at least one aspect of it. The masculine as the principle in which meaning comes together. Is that right? I wouldn't say that the meaning comes together. We could understand it as the seed or the principle. And so the coming together happens as they join together, right? As the masculine and feminine come together, that's where the coming together happens. That's where the consummation happens. That's where the union of opposites, that's where the child is formed, right? That's the coming together, is the child. You have the seed, you have the womb, you have the child, right? And that's it. Okay, so my main question is related to the nature of the primacy of masculine over feminine. Adam came before Eve, and Christ pre-exists Mary. And yet, Eve causes Adam to fall, and Mary gives birth to Christ. In this, there seems a mystery. Could you elaborate on this a bit more? Oh my goodness, there is definitely a mystery. There is definitely a mystery there. And St. Paul knows there's a mystery. St. Paul knows there's a mystery. I forget the reference of the passage, but St. Paul talks about this when he says, you know, every man comes from a woman. The first woman came from man. Every man comes from a woman. And then he says, I say this about Christ and his church. There's this very interesting relationship. And St. Ephrem the Syrian, in his comment on that text of St. Paul, he goes intense, because he then connects, which St. Paul doesn't do. St. Paul just says there's the mystery there, but St. Ephrem the Syrian goes even further, and then he connects the masculine coming from the feminine to the divine nature of God as the divine womb, and God manifesting himself out of the divine womb. And so it's like, wow, my goodness. So it's going to be very difficult for you to find the causality, right? Because it just depends on which side you're looking from. The infinite itself is neither masculine nor feminine, the origin of all things. And so it's as if what you're seeing in the stories is the way of describing it is flipped in different stories, right? Like you said. So Eve comes from Adam, but then all of man comes from Eve, and then the church is Christ is born out of Mary, but then the church is born out of Christ's side, etc., etc., etc. There's this relationship of causality, which if you take both at the same time, can maybe point you to a mystery which is above it, which cannot be uttered. Maybe that's the best way for me to describe it.